Welcome. I'm glad to see everybody. It looks like I just lost access. For some reason, I'm losing access to one of my Facebook pages, so I apologize for that. But for all of you that are here, welcome. Please check in, family. Let us know where you're hailing from. I'm so glad to see you all today. Some of you have already heard this news, and I did share a little bit about it on yesterday, but I promise to go into more detail today about what's going on in the banking industry as it relates to the revaluation of currencies. Now, keep checking in. And before I go deep into the podcast, let me just say that a revaluation is just reinstating the value of a country's currency back based on the assets held by that country. So it's reinstating or reinstalling a country's currencies based on the resources and assets that the country has. So we are waiting for a global currency reset where all the currencies worldwide will be revalued or reinstated back to their rightful places based on the current resources that each countries have. This is why the countries for the last few years have repatriated their gold and their artifacts back to them from the Vatican and back from London, from the Queen, and from other places. They repatriated all of their resources that was stolen, their art, some of their artwork was stolen, some of their gold was stolen, back to their countries so that they, first of all, can lay claim to what's rightfully theirs, and so they can back up all these currencies. So globally, you're experiencing all the countries establishing their sovereignty and making a statement that they're going to use their own currencies and gold. So we're returning to a gold standard or a gold backed system. So keep checking in, family. I do have some beautiful news. Some of you have already heard about this, but I said I would go into detail today. Now, if you missed it yesterday, we talked about how King Charles only has 6 months to live. Pay attention to all of these numbers, 6 months to live. We also talked about how Lord Jacob Rothschild died at 87. 8 plus 7 equal 15. 1 plus 5 and 15 equals 6. So we're going to talk about what the 6 represents a little later in the podcast and why that is important for humanity today. So check in, family. Somebody says, yes, wow, this is really about to happen. Great day. The truth for Jeanette. We have great news today. I'm excited to see you. Good morning. Champion, it's so good to see you as well. Hello, keep checking in, family. You're telling each other good morning, grand rising. Peace, Rodney Bay. I'm always happy to see you. Let's go. Let's get this party started. Sending love. Keep checking in, family. I don't want to keep you long. Good evening. Who is this? Kathy from England. Wow, it's good to have you here. Charlotte's checking in the house. Let's see, very exciting times from Orlando. You're only, about 2 hours from me? I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. Good afternoon, Immaculate Cleaning Company, Green Clean Company, excuse me. She's from, he or she, I don't know, female or male, but from Charlotte. Good evening from the UK. Hi, Mike. It's good to see you as always. Oh, Modesto, California is in the house. Keep checking in, family. Good afternoon, Ronell Bay. I'm so excited. Hi, family. Peace to you all. Hi, C. Lackey, Daniel, Stephen. It's so good to see you. Brother Jamal's in the house, always a faithful viewer. I'm so glad to see you. Family, this is exciting news for those of us who hold currencies. And so many people may be watching that don't know about exotic or foreign currencies. So for many years, some of us have been, or maybe just recently years, have been collecting the Iraqi dinar, the Vietnamese dong, the Venezuelan bolivar, the Afghani, the Indonesian rupiah, the Indian rupee, and some other currencies. These are the currencies or the money held by each country. Now, the reason why people are collecting these is because they're preparing for, like I said, a reinstatement of the natural lawful value of those currencies during this global currency reset. Looks like, I'm sorry, I keep losing certain social media. I don't know why, losing access to this podcast. I don't know why they keep kicking people out of the podcast, but many people are preparing for a revaluation. So keep checking in while I gather my thoughts. When the StreamYard has let me know that they're kicking me out of certain social media platforms, but that's okay. We're going to keep going. So what happens is whenever the United States met with a country that did not want to go along with our financial system, or they did not want to go along with the Federal Reserve banking system, then, or use the United States dollar for trade, then the United States government would send our military over to those countries and start a war. So we would start a war, and or we would put sanctions on those countries just for not wanting to play along and using the United States dollar for trade. Well, that happened with Kuwait, some of the other countries. So when the United States would send military over to those other countries and start a war, the military at the high level, people who knew what to do and knew what was really going on in the financial sense behind the scenes, would buy that country's currencies while the currency was low. So when you cause a war, like say in Kuwait, then the country's currency would become significantly devalued because of the war, and you will have decimation of the economy over there, such as in Kuwait. So military, high professionals in the military, so-called elite families, billionaires all over the planet, CEOs of banks, and just billionaires all over the planet will go to those current countries, buy the devalued currency, and then wait until after the war. Hold on to the currency and wait till after the war. Then after the war, the United States would go back into the country, rebuild it, and then the country's GDP would explode. The country's currency would revalue or be reinstated to its lawful or natural value. And then those military professionals, elite people, billionaires who had bought the currency while it was devalued and decimated through war, they would then, after the war, go to the bank and exchange and get a higher exchange rate. And they became millionaires and billionaires overnight. Well, that happened as recently as 1991 in Kuwait. And now some people are just finding out about that, because whereas before only the elite knew about it, now the creator and certain people up in the military want us, we the little people, or we the everyday people, to know about these revaluation of currencies. So now that you're having a global currency reset, not to be confused with the Great Reset, the global currency reset is a resetting of the financial system, the destruction, of the SWIFT system based on the United States dollar, completely decimating it, and a resurrection of a gold-backed system. So now you're having a global currency reset where all the currencies worldwide are being reset back to their normal value based on the country's resources that each country has, and all the country's currencies will be one-to-one. So let me slow down. I want to take my time because I have a lot of information in my head and sometimes I get kind of thrown off. So bear with me, family. Keep checking in and let me know if you have something to add to the conversation. And if you also if you want to join the conversation, I can send you a link. I love you too. I love you back. I can send you a link and you can join the conversation, especially if you have something, hello, my darling, to add. Okay. So what is going on in the news? I see you checking in. What has most recently happened is that on February 20th, which was just 8 days ago, global banks met to prepare for Basel III compliant Tier 2 notes. Most of you are familiar with Basel III compliancy. Basel III banking compliancy just states that banks had to be monitored and they had to institute certain regulations and rules to make sure that the banking system was lawful and fair. Okay, lawful and fair. So no longer could they do nefarious banking practices like steal your money out of the banks, trade with your money. They can no longer exact usury or interest rates on certain loans, and all of the credit policies, all of that came under fire and under scrutiny by the good people who are in power now that have decimated, or I should say taken down, the nefarious banking policies. So Basel III compliancy says that they had to First, recognize gold as a tier 1 asset. Gold being a tier 1 asset means that gold now has to be recognized as money. Well, the second part of Basel III compliancy means that now that the banks had to accept or prepare for revaluation assets or revaluation reserves. And I'll go into that in a little detail right now. I'm going to show you the article that talks about, wow, I got kicked out of another, Twitter just kicked me out, not Twitter. One of the social media platforms. So let me show you this article right here, family. I can get to it, that talks about this meeting that the banks held just February the 20th. Global banks gear up for Tier 2 capital notes issuance under Basel III guidelines. A consortium of leading banks, you see this, many of the leading banks worldwide, including BBVA, Bank of America Securities, ING, Mashreq, Morgan Stanley, and Standard Chartered Bank, are set to meet with global investors on February the 20th, 2024 to assess their appetite for United States or USD denominated Basel III compliant Tier 2 notes. This strategic move aims to bolster the bank's capital structures and promote financial stability according with the Basel III guidelines. So let me break this down a little bit. These leading banks, BBVA, Bank of America Securities, ING, Mashreq, Morgan Stanley, and Standard Chartered Bank all met with global investors 8 days ago to assess their appetite or preparedness for USD denominated Basel III compliant Tier 2 notes. What are Tier 2 notes? They're preparing for Tier 2 notes or to receive Tier 2 notes. Who are they going to get those Tier 2 notes from, and what are Tier 2 notes? So let me show you here. I do have an article that shows what those Tier 2 notes are. One second. Keep checking in, family. Keep talking to each other while we go through this article, these articles. Tier 2 capital definition. There are 4 components. Okay, what is Tier 2 capital? The term Tier 2 capital refers to one of the components of a bank's required reserves. So we already know that the bank had to recognize under Basel III gold as a Tier 1 asset. So gold would be one of the things that's required for the bank to now hold. Tier 1, gold, okay? The term Tier 2, however, refers to one of the components of a bank's required reserves that's different from gold. Tier 2 is designated as the second or supplementary layer of a bank's capital and is composed of items such as revaluation reserves. So now I'm going to read that again. Tier 2 is designated as the second or supplementary layer of a bank's capital. So the bank had at least 2 layers, the first layer being Tier 1 assets and the second layer being Tier 2 assets. And this is the supplementary level of a bank's capital, composed of items such as revaluation reserves, hybrid instruments, and subordinated term debt. It is considered less secure than Tier 1 capital, the other form of a bank's capital, because it's more difficult to liquidate. In the United States, the overall capital requirement is partially based on the weighted risk of a bank's assets. Here are 4 takeaways from this particular article. Tier 2 capital is the second layer of a capital that a bank must keep as a part of its required reserves. So now banks have to have this second layer of defense or protection, a Tier 2 asset. So that's the first component. The second component is the tier is comprised of revaluation reserves. What's a revaluation reserve? Your currency, the Iraqi dinar, the Vietnamese dong, the what else? Afghani currency, Afghanistan currency, the Afghani, Indonesian rupiah, Indian rupee, and other currencies. This tier is comprised of revaluation reserves, general provisions, subordinated term debt, and hybrid capital instruments. There are two levels of tier two capital. There's an upper level and then there's a lower level. Tier two capital is subordinate to tier one. Tier one, of course, is going to take precedence because it's gold. Gold is money. According to the Constitution, the only thing you can use to pay off debt are silver and gold. Silver and gold, according to the Constitution, is lawful money, right? Or they are lawful money. This is why, and I've shown you the articles, you can text it, you can look it up now, 43 states have moved to reclaim silver and gold as money because everybody's preparing. You can also look at the King Worlds article that says the whole world is hurtling back to gold. You can also look at articles that say that banks are hoarding gold in record numbers. In 2022, banks hoarded 1,136 tons of gold in the third quarter of 2022. In 2023, the third quarter, banks hoarded the second highest amount of gold ever, and nobody knew why. It was because they were preparing for Basel III compliancy to make sure they recognize gold as a tier one asset. These assets protect banks against bankruptcy and against losses. So that was tier one. Tier two includes revaluation reserves. So again, upper level and lower level. The fourth component is tier two capital is subordinate to tier one capital and is considered riskier as it is more difficult to calculate if a bank needs to liquidate it. So I'll leave this in the description section for you to read more or further into at your leisure. Let's go back to the original Greetings family, the original article that I just showed you, so you can see a little bit more about how banks are preparing or why this is important. In a move that underscores the evolving landscape of international finance, a consortium of leading banks have embarked on a pivotal mission. Authorized by an undisclosed bank, I'm not sure which bank that is, these financial titans are set to traverse continents, meetings scheduled across Asia, Europe, and the United States on February the 20th. Their objective is clear yet complex: to assess their appetite of global investors for USD denominated Basel III compliant tier two notes, a critical component in strengthening the bank's capital structure. Let's look at the purpose of this. Let me see if I can find the purpose. Here it is. In conclusion, as the consortium of banks embark on a critical mission, the eyes of the financial world will be watching. The successful issuance of tier two capital notes will not only serve as bellwether for the health of the banking sector, but also a signal of the industry's adaptability in the face of evolving regulations. Why? Let me see if I can show you it in this article, because the purpose of tier two notes is to provide an additional buffer to protect the bank from losses and to avert bankruptcies. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, here it is. The essence of tier two capital. In other words, the banks are preparing for a revaluation of currencies and the currency exchange because they need your foreign currencies, these revaluation assets, in order to bolster the bank's health and in order to protect them against losses and to protect the banks against bankruptcy. And you can see it here in the essence of of tier two capital. At the heart of this financial maneuvering lies the concept of tier two capital, a term that resonates with significance in the corridors of global banking. Tier two capital, as defined under the Basel III guidelines, plays a vital role in a bank's ability to absorb losses and avert bankruptcy. So the banks need you. The banks need me to bring in our currencies, and they're going to give us an exchange rate, of course, in order to protect the bank against losses. This is why I don't support the ideologies that you need to have a non-disclosure agreement or an NDA. I don't believe you have to sign an NDA with the banks when you make these exchanges, because they need you. The bankers are now working for you. The banks now work for we the people. This is why articles have been coming out saying that a lot of banks are closing, and the ones that are remaining now are only there for wealth management purposes. You can find that article. I've reported on that. They need you. Nobody can tell you that you can't talk about your money. We are sovereign. Our republic has been restored. It's time that we start operating in our sovereignty. They need you for the health of the bank. They need you to protect themselves from bankruptcy, to protect themselves from losses. So if anybody needs to sign a non-disclosure agreement, it would be the bankers. In my eyes, they need to keep their mouth shut about what you're holding. Also, a non-disclosure agreement is only something that you sign if this is information that's not been made known to the public. Well, the public knows about the revaluation of currencies and the global currency reset now, so I don't happen to believe that you have to have a non-disclosure agreement. So here again, at the heart of this financial maneuvering lies the concept of Tier 2 capital, a term that resonates with significance in the corridors of global banking. Tier 2 capital, as defined under the Basel III guidelines, plays a vital role in a bank's ability to absorb losses and avert bankruptcy. It comprises elements such as undisclosed reserves, subordinated term debt, and hybrid instruments, which collectively provides a buffer against financial distresses. Your currencies that you hold provide a buffer against financial distresses. So the banks need you and they need me. And according to these articles, they met on February the 20th to determine their appetite, their preparedness for receiving your currencies and the revaluation or the exchange of these currencies. This is an exciting time to be alive. This is excellent, exciting news. So if you have currencies, hold on for dear life, or as people in the financial world say, hodl, hold on with everything you have. Do not exchange or give up your currencies. Don't get discouraged. Stay encouraged. The issuance of Tier 2 notes, therefore, is not just a matter of regulatory compliance, but a strategic move to fortify the bank's resilience against unforeseen economic shocks. This explanation here is also the reason why I don't necessarily feel comfortable about going to a strange place that might be privately owned and call themselves a redemption center. Now, maybe people that use the word redemption center, maybe they're referring to the banks, but I'm not going to a place that calls itself a redemption center. I need a bank that is Basel compliant, including Basel III compliant, and that's being regulated so that I know that they are being regulated by benevolent factors and by we the people. So I don't want an 800 number. I don't need it. Anybody can buy an 800 number. This is just Dr. Kia Pruitt talking. Now I support and I am okay with people that say we're going to have an 800 number. It's just not something that I'm comfortable with, because anybody can buy an 800 number. How do I know it's the right number to get? And I'm not necessarily in agreement that you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, because nobody can tell me how to manage my money, what to do with my money, how much I'm going to get. I can tell you to sign an NDA and keep your mouth shut as a banker. And I don't want to go to nobody's private redemption center. This is just Dr. Kia Pruitt. I need to go to some place that I believe is heavily regulated and Basel compliant. So having said that, let's move along. If you need more information about what's going on economically and even geopolitically, then I thank you. I would recommend, and I've said this before, that you follow Ariel on Twitter. And I have to give credit to where credit is due, because even though I had this information and people sent me articles or just said, did you know about this? Like a week or two ago, I wasn't confident enough to actually explain it until I researched and I kept reading and asking questions. And then I went to Ariel's Twitter account to see if he was speaking on it. So let's see what he has to say about this. Ariel here, this is what he looks like on Twitter. I recommend you follow him. This was an official banking announcement, he said. Global banks gear up for Tier 2 capital notes issuance under Basel III guidelines. And let's see how he makes it plain for us. The purpose of Tier 2 reserves. Capital Tier 1 capital. This is the thick, strong inner wall, he says, made of things like shareholder equity and retained earnings. And I'd like to add gold, because we know gold became banks had to recognize gold as a Tier 1 asset under Basel III compliancy. It's the first line of defense against financial trouble. Secondly, Tier 2 capital is a second wall that's not as strong as the first one, but still valuable. It's made up of things like undisclosed reserves, subordinated debt, and hybrid capital instruments. And one article says also revaluation reserves. So revaluation reserves, including your Iraqi dinar and all those other currencies. Tier 2, a revaluation asset, I should say, excuse me, not a revaluation reserve, a revaluation asset. So a revaluation asset are those currencies such as the IQD or Iraqi dinar and other foreign currencies. All of those are considered as it relates to banks now having to be recognized as having Tier 2 assets. Banks are holding meetings right now as of February the 20th to help set up this safety net against the coming currency revaluation that will phase out the fiat currency by converting your Iraqi dinar into U.S. Treasury bills that the banks will use as reserves. So to make it plain, your Iraqi dinar, your Vietnamese dong, and your other foreign currencies are deemed as a revaluation asset. Banks are preparing to receive your revaluation asset and to be able to handle the amount of revaluation assets or currencies that you're going to bring in, because they need those currencies to bolster them and to buffer them, against any type of financial loss or bankruptcy. So you will basically create, you and I, if you have currencies, a financial blanket against the coming black swan event when banks will have to weather the storm. So if you happen to have, let's say, 10 to 50 million IQD, you just bolstered the reserves of the bank that will do your exchange. The purpose of Tier 2 reserves, like other elements of Tier 2 capital, is to provide an additional buffer to protect the bank from losses. It acts as a cushion before the bank has to tap into core capital and potentially affect its ability to lend money. So he says, to further break it down, it just means the assets that you have absorb losses. If the bank faces bad loans or other financial difficulties, then Tier 2 reserves can be used to absorb those losses before they reach the bank's capital. This helps to protect depositors and other creditors. Next, it maintains financial stability. By having a strong Tier 2 capital base, banks can weather financial storms more easily and maintain their ability to lend money and support the economy. He asked the question, do you now understand your role as a currency holder? You and I will be the lifeline of banks going forward. So now we have a whole new type of banking system. You and I will be the lifeline of the banks. The banks know this, which is why they're preparing to serve your best financial interest once the IQD is trading globally on the Forex market. The only thing I understand or overstand we're waiting on now is for the IQD to trade globally on the Forex market. So I hope that's brought some ease to your mind for those of you who have currency